Such a pleasure to have you on, both of you. We are doing Monday Meals. This is Oakland Rising. Um, and, Oakland Rising is really all about getting folks out and engaging. And we are one day, 24 hours, maybe a little bit more from elections. And it is just an opportunity we wanted to jump on and talk about why voting really actually does matter. And lots of things have happened today. There's just so many yummy, good things to talk about around voting matters. But, just a reminder to folks why we do Monday Meals is so we can talk about the issues that are affecting us here in Oakland, our people, Black, Indigenous, people of color across the Bay, particularly here in the flatlands of Oakland. And we stay focused on that because, man, there's so much going on. But we really want to make sure that folks understand the issues and can take action and get activated and engage. And so we have Saabir from EBASE, East Bay Alliance for a Sustainable Economy, joining us, as well as Jose Bernal from Ella Baker Center. And my brain is all of, I'm like, half of me is thinking about numbers, the other half of me is thinking about partying, hopefully, all things. But let's start off with is just, I'll go to you, Saabir, and then we'll go to you, Jose. Just like, what's it been like working to get people out to vote in the primary election?
Well, it's been really exciting, actually. I think that, we at a critical time in history where where we can actually mobilize people, right? And raise up the importance of what voting is, for the community and how like voting is impacting us on a very material gain, right? Like I think like with the board of supervisors races specifically, people don't understand how much impact the board of supervisors have on the local city funding, right? And we're talking about mental health services, we're talking about like reentry, we're talking about housing, like all of those things are connected to county funding that can be liquidated and moved into like the cities, right? If we had the right elected officials in office that had a concern about the material benefit and gain of the community. So it's been really exciting, honestly. Whether it's been training, whether it's been like basic civic engagement trainings we've been doing around like monolingual Spanish speaking folks, right? Getting them involved in voting or even understanding like, and I've been seeing like excitement around folks that can't even vote but want to register people to vote because they see the importance of it for their community, right? And how to get involved and be engaged. So that's just a few things that, been exciting for me in this process. And in this specific time, there's a lot happening. Like you opened up, we got a lot going on right now in this primary. We have these recalls, right? Also, and folks got to understand, like, there's some things that can like put us back, or there's some things that can put us forward, right? Yeah, so just being aware of the issues, because I think like an informed voter is an important voter, right? It's not enough to just say I'm gonna vote, but what is it to be actually informed on the key issues and the key races that's gonna make a benefit? So that's I'll end with that. An informed voter is an important voter, and reaching out to people and educating the public is really important.
That's right. That's right. Jose, what about you?
Well,
what are you enjoying?
This is obviously a very consequential year, electoral year, national, state, local level. A lot is at stake, and there's also a lot of discontent, right? A lot of disgust at our state, from all levels, whether it's local, state, national, and I say it's challenging, to get our folks to exercise their power sometimes, for voting. I completely understand, and I will also say that like it's one of the few levers that we have to really hold people in office accountable, to really hold the system accountable. It's not easy, but it really is. And if it wasn't important, All these billionaires, think about it, all these billionaires drop billions every year, every election year. They drop billions, right? Because they understand the formula and they understand that's how they get what they want, right? And that's how they put us down. And so by design, it's that way, right? For our folks to not feel like their voices are heard through the ballot box, so that our folks feel that way, you know. And our job as organizers, our jobs as folks with that lived experience, you know, is to be the credible messengers to say, like, you know, brother, sister, homie, you know, cousin, you know, neighbor, like, it's important. Your voice really matters. And, you know, one of the most rewarding things for me was first year they ever let me inside Santa Rita to go do voter registration, you know, and so go inside jail, talking to folks, you know, and letting them know, like, hey, like, you can vote, you know, just because you're here doesn't mean you can't vote, and absolutely your voice matters. So that's been rewarding, and then conversations with people, talking to folks on the street. I get this a lot, you know. Folks tell me, well, I'm a convicted felon, I can't vote, and I'm like, no, that's absolutely not true. You know what I mean? I have a form of conviction. We absolutely want you to vote. You need to vote. If anybody should vote, it's you. You know what I mean? Because, like, you understand the issues, you understand what's happening. You're here in the community, and so, yeah. But I'll say the conversations that, you know, just having with folks is very meaningful and really important. So, you know, we'll see what happens this Tuesday. I think it's expected, like most primaries, a low voter turnout, but, you know, we'll see.
Yeah. Jose, would you please explain to folks why felons can now vote? Because I think that there's a lot of misconceptions out there in the community. And it'd be really helpful if you could take a little bit of time to break that down for folks.
So, by design, people with convictions, people who are have been involved in the system, by design, voter disenfranchisement, period, right? Like, they in most states, you can't vote. In California, you can vote. In California, as long as you're not serving in a state or federal prison, you can vote. And until very recently, it used to be that when you were on parole, you couldn't vote. So when I got out, I was on parole. I couldn't vote until I finally got off parole. But that law, that there was a constitutional amendment that changed that, and so, like, even if you're on parole, you're on paper probation, you can vote 100%. And so, again, it's by design. You know, like, there's a few states in the nation that let people vote even though they're currently incarcerated in state prison. And no surprise, the a state like Vermont, right, has a majority white population incarcerated. They can vote, right? But California, you can't vote if you're in state prison. At least not now. You know, there is an effort, a coalition of folks that are looking to change that. So.
That's yeah. Thanks for breaking that down, because I think it's important. Part of the reason why we do voter education and engagement is because people don't get this information from the places where they should be getting this information, like the Register of Voters or the Secretary of State. And so I really appreciate you reminding folks that this is a constitutional amendment we fought for, to really give our brothers and sisters who have been impacted by the system the right to vote, because their voices matter. Who better to tell us how to deal with some of the issues that are happening in this primary, particularly around public safety, since that's such a big issue that has come up across the board, than folks who have had experiences in engaging in different components of the system and what people deem as the consequence of not creating safety. Oh, look at the balloons. Ooh, fascinating. I'm going to learn that I can do that. So, talk to me, Saabir. Talk to the public about, you know, you mentioned that it's important to be informed about being a voter, right? And then also being informed. What are the things that you have found people need to really learn about in voting? And also, like, what have you heard folks really not be clear about in this civic engagement that you've been doing over the last couple of weeks?
Now, that's a very interesting question because, you know, we're finding that folks really don't know who their representatives are.
Mm.
Like across the board. Like, you know, folks are detached from who actually represents them, and not only who represents them, but what do their representatives control, right? Whether it's be city council, whether it be the board of supervisors. Like folks don't have a real clear idea of like what it is that the folks are responsible for, elected officials are responsible for. Um, so it's been exciting. So I'm gonna go back to the exciting pieces though, right? Just tapping off a little bit about what Jose had to say, because for me, I think when we engage voter and voter education, typically, there's like we're looking at high propensity voters, right? We're looking like how do we turn folks out? How do we get people to the polls? How do who do we contact when we're like doing phone banking and all that? But I am like so much in the belief that we have a change of time coming right now, right? And when you talk about like the re-entry population who actually can vote now, it takes me back to Prop 47, right? When we were doing education and outreach around Prop 47, and what it meant is just what didn't the people know? They didn't know that their felonies were reduced to misdemeanors, and then therefore now you have job opportunities, now you have housing opportunities. So I think we have to connect like the material benefit of why voting is important, right? And educate the people about what their local officials actually represent for them, are in control of. And when we can make that connection in voter education, then we can mobilize people to action. And that's what I think right there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that it's been really interesting. I've been out on the doors. I've also been part of phone banks. It's been really interesting hearing folks not understand their representatives as well. It's been really hearing folks' position on Palestine,
Mm-hmm.
and coming up on the doors. I've heard a lot of people say they're not going to vote because they're concerned about the federal government involvement in Palestine, and really want to stand strong on ceasefire. I've also heard folks say, like, I just don't believe, that voting matters, that like my vote is going to change any conditions for my life or for my family. And I think that that's probably caused me the most pause of being like, what do you mean? Like, but I think that's because I'm in this work. You're in this vote, you're in this work. All of us are in this work, right? And I think we see day in and day out how, representatives respond to those who they believe to be a regular voter, right? Folks who they believe to have some voting power, right? And we struggle with how to explain that a lot of times to folks who are really not able to do the deeper engagement that we all have the privilege of being able to do. What would be your message right now who's on the fence, right? Someone who's like, I don't really believe what would matter. I don't really, yeah, I hear you. But, these millionaires are buying these elections. These folks are doing these things, right? How can we possibly make anything matter right now? What would you all say to those folks? Because let's just keep it real. Everybody's thinking it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
What? Go ahead, Jose. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I hear that, you know what I mean, and I've definitely felt that way for sure. And on the ballot, when you go to the ballot box, or you're filling it out on the mail, like there's a lot on there, right? And it's not just federal, it's not just a presidential election. There's a lot of like real world consequences that will happen. Case in point, I'm just gonna point to something in San Francisco, right? They have two very bad ballot measures, and one of them, for example, requires drug testing, to receive like benefits, right? To receive your GA, or most vulnerable people, right? Another one basically takes off all accountability from police and lets them do high-speed chases on the streets of San Francisco for petty theft, essentially. You know what I mean? And that has consequences, right? And in elections, what I see is we might all say like, man, that's a bad, terrible idea. And you think about it, we all think of it, like, damn, that's going to be dangerous. What if I'm walking down with my kid on the street? You know what I mean? And like, it could be all bad, right? And in elections, what I've seen, it comes down to who can turn their people out, right? Because it's one thing to think about it, and another thing to actually go and exercise that, and the other side, right? Like the other people, the, right wing, MAGA people, like they're about it. They're passionate and they show up, and so, that is who can turn their people out, right? And so it does matter. And, I've also have voted, in the past for things with like that I wasn't sure. Because it's not just one thing on the ballot. There are a lot of things, and if I'm not sure about it, maybe I'll leave it blank. I won't vote for that or I'll vote, uncommitted, or whatever, something else. You know what I mean? Whatever you want to write in. I've written people in too. Because I didn't get them. But that's my way of expressing my frustration and my voice.
Right. I think what I would only thing I would add to that is I would say, like, I think historically, we've been disenfranchised. Historically, the system has not worked for us, right? Historically, we've been unable to get jobs and adequate housing and to live in healthy environments, let alone participate in the electoral process. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that slavery existed. It wasn't that long ago that women didn't have the right to vote,
Right.
right? So we still combating, like, excuse me, a long history of trauma around voting and being pushed out of that system, right? And then, like, you know, being marginalized also isn't a monolith, right? So there are those who like went straight into the system, and then we call it the democratic part people, right? The democratic clubs. Then, there's multiple different forms of power building. Then we got like labor, right? And what labor, how they build power. And one of the beautiful things I love about Oakland Rising is we're building people power,
That's right.
right? So making that known amongst voters that there's also, you are the people too, right? And you can change elections. Why I'm so excited again about formerly incarcerated folks being able to vote, because that is a game changer. If we can do the right education, get inside them jails, get folks vote registered, you know what I mean, start acclimating them on the civic engagement process and the issues that matter, we can change the game, right? And this is so it is our duty, right? I don't want to get into the chants and everything, but it is our
Our
duty
duty.
to get involved, to fight. It's our duty to win, like 100%, and to build the people power necessary to offset the balance of, you may have a lot of money, but you know what? If we can mobilize and put people on doors, I'm sorry, your money ain't gonna matter, because we can
That's
put
right.
people on doors. We can talk to people face to face, and we can flip elections, right? And then our folks who thinking that they don't have a voice, you actually do have a voice when you're well informed on the issues that impact your life. Because you may be having housing issues, you may be having lack of job opportunities. You know what I'm saying? You may be in some material deficit that an election could flip for you. Not just elected official, but a ballot initiative, a measure, something that can change your life and material gain, right? And then that's our job, to educate the public. So I'm just to say, like, hey, we do matter, we do have a voice, and when we come together, we become a power base as well.
That's right. It's really deep that, I have my grandmother's 92. I always tell people this story because I'm really proud to have a grandmother that is 92, right? She's the granddaughter of someone who was enslaved, right? And I think I've grown up all my life really being reminded of that, right? Being reminded of the reality that I have someone in my life who did not have the same rights that I have right now, right? My grandmother didn't have the right to vote as a young person when she turned 18, right? That she was I won't say she was out in the streets with MLK, because she very clear that she was not. But she stood in solidarity in different ways, right? And
Hmm.
she voted every election to this day. When I talked to her the other day, she's like, yeah, I got my ballot in. We made sure to get it in that first week because I don't want them to miss my ballot. And there's a lot who don't realize that, like, that is the standard for most of our elders, 65 and older, who really did witness this transformation in this country of being able to vote, right? And take for don't take for granted, excuse me, that they have that right, because they realize how hard and how long we fought to get to that right, and all the early challenges with being able to assert that right. And here I am, her granddaughter, having had the opportunity to run for office is something that, I'm so proud to have given my grandmother, right? And being on both the candidate side and being here, I can tell folks, it's really important to vote, right? Not just because of everything that Jose has lifted up, or Saabir has lifted up, but also because there are folks who are actually trying to run to get into these offices, who are trying to change the face of what government looks like, how it feels. And when we're not able to show up to the ballot to support the both the candidates, but also support the measures that are about our community, right? What if we want to increase building affordable housing? What if we want to increase being able to have more tenant rights, or address longstanding issues like evictions, right? And whether folks have just cause for evictions or not. What if we want to address, the price of the Bay Bridge? Let's just name some stuff that people really, I know people get really passionate about, right? Access to public transportation, all these things that touch our day-to-day lives, right? As Jose Saabir mentioned, often have to go to the ballot, right? And if they don't go to the ballot, they often have to go before these candidates who are then elected to make those issues prevalent or not prevalent in our community, in our favor or not in our favor in the community. And there's something that you mentioned, Jose, that I want to really double down on and then ask you all a question. We got to talk about the role of money, right? We have to talk about the resources play in who gets access to participate in democracy and who doesn't, right? I always like to remind people that you have the right to take off from work to go vote, right? How many employers are actually out here educating their employees? Hey, you should take Tuesday off so you can go vote. Or, hey, you should take a day, the 10 days prior, pick a time that everyone can go and vote. I've not heard not one employer say that, right? But it's a right we all have, right? I've also not heard folks talk about, let's do ballot parties. Let's really make sure that we all sit down and talk and communicate with each other, fill our ballots out, make sure that we get it in the mail, or actually go to a vote center and fill it out. So there's just these things I want to point out, because the reason wealth comes up around those things is because folks who have wealth do those things.
Yep.
They do so consistently.
They have time.
They could not imagine a February without a ballot party, or they could not imagine not having time off to vote. They could not imagine life without those privileges, and they use those privileges. And it trips me out that we don't recognize that. We kind of do sometimes. Oh yeah, those folks, right? But it's not a part of our culture. It's not like, I remember back in the day we had Rock the Vote, and we had all these concerts and all these ways in which people were really getting activated through the culture, through hip hop culture, through modern culture, popular culture, right? To just vote. And I think we've lost some of that over the last couple of years. I think this is the year that I really want to encourage us to really explore how we bring it back, because our wealth is our culture. It might not always be money, the way that millionaires and billionaires and corporations have to just pay for mailers and pay for phone bankers and pay for signature gatherings and all these things that happen. But when we bring ourselves together to celebrate, like we did for the Black Joy Parade, and that big moment of just love for Oakland, we do really amazing things. We learn about things through culture. And I'm curious if you all had a magic wand, to really ensure that people are getting the word out about the voting. What would you do with culture to really make it popular, make it exciting to actually take these stands on voting? What would you do, Jose?
Yeah, well, shit, like you said, Pecolia, we already know, what's being done, right? But we don't have the resources at scale that other folks are doing with money, and that's these ballot parties that you're talking about. They hire a whole field team, like an army of canvassers, right? Army of phone bankers, go out, talk to people. Like, we could do that, and we do it now, but it's mainly volunteer led, right? Because we don't have the same budget that they have. But there's a lot that could be done, because I think one of the the issues that we come across is that it's hard to see something that's not in the short term tangible. You know, like if I tell you, yo, man, when Pecolia gets in office, look, Pecolia's gonna do X, Y, and Z. I seen her do it. You know what I mean? It's hard to see it because you're not seeing it in real time. You know, like it's, you know, like it will happen, but it won't happen, you know, in real time, right? As I'm talking to somebody, and so, you know, but I will say that, like, you know, all the money, you can run whatever radio ad, you can run whatever TV ad, whatever mailer, you can send all of that, but it doesn't carry as much weight as if it's somebody I know, if it's my neighbor,
Mm-hmm.
you know, somebody I went to school with, you know, that I trust, that I know. It doesn't carry as much weight if Saabir came to me and said, "Yo, Jose, check this out. I want to talk to you about," you know, and that's what we're doing, you know. And so I think it's just doing that at scale, right? Doing that at larger scale, right?
Right.
And one of the fundamental core principles of organizing, period, whether it's electoral issue-based organizing, is building leaders. You know what I mean? And so, you know, none of us started off like, man, I was never crazy about voting. I was never about it. It was never about policy, organizing, none of that. But it took some of the OGs, right, to be like, hey, Jose, come through to this rally. You know, Jose, come through. I want you to talk on this panel. Jose, let me talk to you about something. You know, and same thing, you know, and that's what we do. And you know, in the spirit of Ella, right, Ella Baker, that was her whole thing about building leaders in the community, right? It wasn't just, we don't need no charismatic leader. You know, we needed strong communities like that can be, you know, their own voice. And so that's what we want to do. You know, it's not just getting folks to the ballot box. It's also skilling folks up. You know what I mean? Having folks have all the skills that they need to then skill up other people. You know, and that's how we build strong community.
That's right. That's that Ella Baker quote. Strong people don't need strong leaders.
That's right.
Yeah. Got you. I got you. What about you, Saabir?
Oh, wow. I think the only thing the value add to this conversation would be thinking outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
S- Jose had talked about scaling up. Like, what does it actually look like to scale up and to join forces and collaborate around our efforts? Um, and really like take the initiative to start, because we do a lot of the things, right? We do house parties, we do like phone bank parties, you know, we put together these mass canvases to do outreach in the community, you know, in so many different ways. But I think we do them in a way that's isolated to that particular thing, right? We may do a house party for fundraising, but we don't think about what would that same people that attend that house party look like, you know, in a phone bank session,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or like if we can get that house party and that phone bank session together and then do a ballot party, right? Like we don't think about it that way. So I think, you know, scaling up like that as well, like utilizing our resources to its greatest potential would be definitely something for us to start to think about and to implement.
Mm-hmm.
That will make a great difference.
That's what's up. I like the idea of combining. I like the idea of scaling. I also really want to put it out there. Like we also just need to make it popular, right?
Mm.
Uh, so you know,
Throw
maybe
a hip hop ballot party. Yeah.
like let's just keep it real, right? It's not what people woke up this morning talking about. Oh, I'm gonna wake up and vote, right? But we do got to get there, right? And I just want to be real. That I want to see it get there. I want to see it get to a place where like everybody knows the next election. Everybody is able to up like I got my vote plan. Those 10-day centers, I'm seeing people just drive by, you know, drop your ballot on the way to work, right? I think that that's just a real, you know, vision that I have that I hope that we can accomplish at Oakland Rising. I want to see hip hop artists talk about why they vote and how they gonna vote, right? I think we have to get to that place here in the Bay because I think if we don't get to that place, the reality is who regularly votes don't look like us, right? Who regularly is asserting their right to vote are folks who have no clue our lived experiences in our communities, probably don't even live in our communities if we're keeping it real, right? And as long as they continue to mobilize, and if I'm looking at the numbers of who's already submitted their ballots, we're talking about the majority of ballots already being submitted today being folks who are over the age of 65. Now, Not trying to be ageist, not trying to disrespect our elders, but at 65, your lived experience is different than a 30-year-old. It's different than a 19-year-old, right? It's different than our students who are out here in the streets trying to find jobs, trying to really find housing, right? Trying to really survive and live in Oakland and in the Bay Area and having very difficult opportunities to find, right? They're not being able to feel supported, right? And that's just a reality, right? Sympathy is great, empathy is great, but lived experience will always trump those dynamics, right? And that is what I really want to make sure folks who are joining us and who watch this IG Live understand. We are trying to get folks to vote because our lived experience on the ballot is going to ensure that we can protect our communities, straight up.
That's
And if
right.
we got to throw
Yeah.
concerts in East Oakland,
Yep.
no, that's where I'm like, we was at a Royal Vihale, and I'm like, there's enough land there
Uh,
for a nice concert. Get
yeah.
drop your ballots, come on out and do your things, right? So just think that the creativity piece is really important. I love when we, talk about scale and phone banking and those things. And I also really want to make sure that we do things that actually resonate with folks, that build community with each other, right? So, tell folks, so when is voting day? I think it's like, coming up real soon.
Tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
March 5th, folks. So just a couple reminders. One, voting day is tomorrow. Super Tuesday is tomorrow. Ballots are due by 8 p.m. Not 8:01, not 8:05, not 8:30, not oops, I forgot, and run to 8 o'clock on the dot. The voting center is closed. Elections is over. There's voting centers that you can find on acgov.org if you're in Alameda County. You can also go to the Secretary of State, www.sos.ca.gov.
And
Oh,
if you by chance was just too busy, didn't get a chance to register to vote, that's okay. California, you could do same day voting. Just show up, and you can do something called a provisional ballot. So you'll be able to, your vote is going to count. They may not count it that same day. It's going to take a few days, maybe a little longer, so they verify, that you're, eligible to vote. But your vote is going to count. And I've seen elections where that makes all the difference. The provisional ballots, they'll say like, man, this race is too close to call. We got to count those provisional ballots. And so even if you didn't register, still go. You can still vote.
that's right. The other thing that I would like to remind folks about voting too is that make sure you bring your California ID if you're going to the vote center. You want to verify that you are that person that you say you're going to go vote. So just want to remind people to bring some form of identification, California ID, passport, school ID might even be really sufficient, but make sure you're able to identify yourself if you're voting in person. I know everybody that's watching this IG got a ballot in the mail, so go find it. It's in the mail, pal. I say this all the time. People are like, word? I've seen it. It's a big white envelope. I wish I had mine. Maybe I have mine here. Let me see. It looked like this. Big old white envelope. Yeah, there you go. And you can find it in your mail. There's a couple of voter guides that we have populated for folks because this stuff you don't always get access to the information you need, right? We started this conversation off about being informed. Lots of voter guides out there. So type in voter guide on Google and you'll be able to find things with more information. Saabir, any last words? Jose, any last words before we wrap up our Monday meals?
Well, I mean, for me, I think yeah, we covered a lot, and I would just say like, folks, get out there, get to the polls. Like, if you haven't voted yet, get out there right now and vote. And I would also just add, just on an educational piece, if you're, community, we're organizers. So, community, if you feel like, what would make you feel more informed around voting? right? Like contact, Ella Baker, contact EBASE, contact Oakland Rising, right? Like, let us know like what your thoughts are around like being more informed. Like, do you feel like we should do voter registration at events, right? I think that'll be powerful. Every event that community did, they did a voter registration
Yeah.
drive. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. That's what's up.
Yes. And I'll say this because I think it's important. I know that there are many folks who have said that they want to stand in solidarity with Palestine. I stand in solidarity with the call for ceasefire. And I'll just say this: like, if you are uh, wanting to really stand in solidarity, there are a lot of national attempts to really say, let's go ahead and write in other hashtag ceasefire. Encourage folks to do that if that is where you want to take your direct action. But I also want to be really clear that that's not enough, right? In order to get to a ceasefire in Gaza, we need to make sure we have representation across the board to get to that place. And so just want to say that out loud. We need you to still show up. The direct action tomorrow is to vote, right? If we believe in ensuring that our US dollars, our taxes are being used in the ways that we believe and are aligned to our values, the direct action is to vote, right? And get down that ballot, move away from just, being in the streets, but actually making our votes matter and making our votes align with our values. So our local races are counting on you. There are so many issues on the ballot here in Alameda. Check out those voter guides we mentioned. Jose, any last words?
Yeah, check out the Oakland Rising, voter guide. Yeah, check it out, man. So, yeah, and remember to vote. And if you already voted, like I said, there's nothing more powerful than when it comes to somebody you know. And so, if you got a friend, a cousin, anyone, tell them, hey, did you vote yet? You should go out and vote. And you get by law 2 hours that you have to vote on voting day, and your employer has to honor that. So.
That's right. So get your votes in. You don't have a lot of time left, but make that time count. We got about 28, give or take, hours left before the polls close. If you have not voted, just get it in. Last thing to say is we won't be doing Monday meals next Monday because we'll be resting because we've been getting the vote out. We'll be back on March 18th. And then other than that, please, check out EBASE is at Working East Bay. Is it Working East Bay? Is your handle on Instagram? And then Jose, check him out at Ella Baker Center. These are two amazing organizations doing amazing work in our communities to ensure that working folks as well as systems impacted folks are getting the resources that we need and helping to flex people powers, because it's going to take all of us to really move the community forward and move our government to provide the resources we need. Love you all. Hope you are having great meals, having great conversations about the ballots, and get out to vote. Bye.
All right.
See you both soon.
All right.
All right, brother. And